to another episode of Beyond the Stable. Today I'm joined with Kate Lewis, also known as Blob The Cob. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited for coming on. Thank you for having me. I don't know why you're thanking me.
Well, you invited me into your little cottage.
It's because you're all the way up here.
But yeah, no, thanks so much, guys. If you haven't heard of Kate before, I mean, I feel like a lot of people will have. You probably know her best from her YouTube. Her content is amazing. She also has Instagram, TikTok, like all the platforms. So if you haven't heard of Kate, go check her out after this episode. She's
It's a really sweet intro.
You're just an all-round.
I haven't done enough on YouTube this year to deserve that intro, but that was lovely. Thank you.
No, your content is amazing, and like your YouTube, your Instagram, everything is so good, and even your TikTok, like everything is so good. So I'm so excited to speak about it all today.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to start off on like a bit of a fun note. I want to know where your name came from.
Oh my god. So I have a pony called Bob.
Yeah.
So when I was jumping Bob and stuff, that was when we made the account, because I had a previous YouTube before, which something to do with Dreamer, which was my first horse, that didn't really take off, but it is still out there. So if you guys find it, then you have to let me know. But yeah, it was supposed to be Bob the Cob, because obviously Bob, and he's a Welsh dude, so he's a cob. Yeah. We put an L in there, me and my friend, by accident when we were making it. And we were just so stupid back then, we had no idea how to edit it, so we were like, that'll do, I'm sure no one will ever see it, you know. That
is amazing. I never knew that's where it came from. No, that's so good. It's just an accident.
Yeah, just an accident, but it's kind of caught on now. I can't really change it now.
Yeah, no, it'd be a crime to change it now.
It would, yeah.
Let's go right back to the start, and I want to speak about how you got into horses.
Oh, okay. So I was put in lessons when I was like a little kid. So I was probably sort of like 2-3 years old. Mainly because my mum had learned to ride when she was a kid, and my dad had ridden a little bit. He thinks he's really good, but he's not that good. But yeah, I just went to a local riding school, actually the same one that my mum went to.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah, it's really sweet. My brother used to go as well, and fun fact, he was the natural when we were learning, when we were growing up, but he was good at everything. So he everything he did, he was just brilliant at. So every time we went for a lesson, or we were like on holiday and we went to somewhere where we could ride and stuff, they'd always come across to my mum and dad and be like, oh my god, your son is just incredible. Like, Kate's fine, but like
she's alright.
Alan, he's just, oh my god, he's a real talent. And my parents were like, no, this is the one thing Kate has. This is the only
Let her have it.
Yeah, please. Like, they're like, you can't ride anymore, Al, you've got other stuff to do, you're far too busy. Anyway, yeah, I was having riding lessons when I was really little, and then at the riding school I had one coach who was not very good, and she was actually on her phone facing the other way, and the little pony that I was on, it was called Gorgeous at the time as well, and she got down and tried to roll with me, which I thought was hilarious. I was just like this little 3-4-year-old, like, oh my god, look at this pony. My mum was absolutely terrified. She thought this pony was going to kill me, so she like jumped over the barrier, ran across and got this pony up with me, and after that she was like, no, she can't go anymore because she's going to be like killed or something. So then I didn't actually ride again until I was about 8 or 9, but that was only because every time, you know, at school in like English, when they'd make you do like free creative writing and things about like your dreams and stuff like that, I would just write about how my parents had destroyed my life by not letting me ride anymore. So they eventually got called into school to talk about why they wouldn't let me fulfill my dreams.
That is brilliant.
And then I got to start going again. So it's a pretty evil child, really. I don't know whether I knew what I was doing, but I can't imagine how that meeting went. But anyway, I started riding again, and then I got Dreamer when I was 11, and I could ride by that point. I was a decent enough little rider, but I knew nothing about the ground stuff because they never used to teach you it in the riding schools back then. So I remember my friends at the time teaching me like how to put a bridle on the day before I went for the viewing and stuff, because I was thinking that I'd be made to tack up this horse myself, like it was some kind of exam. But yeah, and then we brought Dreamer home the day we tried him, and it all just kind of went from there.
And what did you do with Dreamer?
Dreamer was my first horse, so I didn't really have any specific plans as such. He was 15-1, and my parents got me him. I was only tiny, but they got me him because they thought he would last me my whole life and that they'd never have to get me another horse, which, I mean, jokes on them.
Clearly didn't work.
Clearly that plan went really well. But yeah, we ended up just doing a bit of everything, and he really didn't like jumping when we first started, and I used to think that he just despised it, but in reality it was probably because I couldn't ride him very well around the jumps, and I just kind of expected him to do it for me. So our first little show together, we went, and I think we'd entered like a 50 clear round or something, and we couldn't even get like anywhere near the first fence. So we went into, they were like, you can go in the little clear round area, which was like the ring next to it, and it was all just like cross poles on hole one, like, or poles on the floor. There were literally like Shetlands going round on lead rein and like popping round and stuff, and then there was Dreamer there still being dramatic as anything, and me having to like proper ride him round and be like, come on please, like, and he just, yeah, he was shocking at it. And then as I got going over the years with my jumping, he did get better. He still only preferred jumping like little fences, but he enjoyed it at that. And we won a rug eventually at like a little local show, and that was like the best day ever. Yeah.
Then what happened? When did all the other ponies go?
So then we got Bob, who was my first jumping pony, because with having Dreamer and him not liking the jumping, you know, like we'd get on a school team. We had a school team as well, and that was always really embarrassing because they were always really good and I was shocking. So there were 4 members, and I'd come home and Mum would be like, how did you get on? And I'd be like, we came 4th, and she'd be like, oh, that's brilliant. I'd be like, well, we would have won if I hadn't have got eliminated because the rest of the team went clear. So yeah, we got Bob then, who was my first proper jumping pony. And I remember being chuffed because when I went to try him, we jumped to like a metre upright, like terribly, absolutely in a heap and shocking. But that was like, as a child, that was like the best moment ever. And yeah, Bob taught me so much. Like he's like, as the fences got bigger, you had to be very accurate with where you put him. Especially out in the ring. At home he'd rescue you out of anything really, but in the ring he was a bit of a sensitive soul with where you placed him. When it got to sort of like 110ish and stuff, he was like, right, I need to be placed exactly where I'm going to take off, otherwise I'm not going. But yeah, he taught me so much, and I think that's where I really learned my striding and stuff with him, because at first I was kind of like just kick and hope for the best and stuff, and then I actually broke my collarbone in a warm-up ring at Bishop Burton. So after that I realised that striding kind of probably does matter a little bit, and I probably need to learn that. So yeah, after Bob, I think I had a project pony in between. I tried to remember what order everyone came in, but I'm pretty sure then I got Nero after Bob, which was then obviously my pony that took me all the way up the ranks and stuff. But I could have never gone from Dreamer to Nero, because I remember Sophie Ball, who had Nero, was selling him when I got Bob. So my sort of plan was like, oh my god, Nero's for sale, because I was a massive Nero fan. And I was like, oh my god, we should just get Nero and stuff. And at the time my parents were like, no, you're absolutely insane. And then obviously he sold them to Natalie, who did brilliant things with him and stuff. And I realised years later that I would have never, like, Nero would have never achieved any of the things he did had I got him at that point. I'd have absolutely trashed him because I just didn't have the experience. I was more or less right out of the riding school. Like, I would have just destroyed him. But yeah, it was perfect timing. It felt like it was really meant to be. And it was really odd because I'd always been this big Nero fan, which meant then I was also a big fan of Natalie, and I was like out jumping Bob at the same, like, not the same classes but the same shows and stuff. So I used to follow around like a creepy little stalker, and we talk about this all the time now because it was really creepy. Like, for her birthday I got her a bracelet with the Dark Emperor engraved on it, and she didn't even know me. Like, I was just sat on the stand and she was like a few rows behind me, and I was just like, excuse me, and I'd just give her this like bracelet that cost me about 50 quid or something, and she'd be like, whoa, oh, thank you, and I'd just be like, thanks, and then just like
Is she older than you, the same age?
She's 2 years older than me as Nat, so she came off ponies in 2013, so that was like her last year with Nero. But yeah, and then Jess Hewitt, another rider, rode him for a year before I got him. But yeah, it was always funny looking back, and my dad used to tease me, be like walking around, I'd be like, oh my god, that's Natalie McQuiggan and stuff, and he'd be like, oh, why don't we just go and introduce you and say hi? I'd be like, no, don't be stupid, and like but by the time we got to the end of that summer season, I was quite good friends with Nat. Like, we weren't like super close, but we could have a good chat sort of thing. And I do remember we were sat on the wall at Wales and West at the front where the offices are, and me and my little group would kind of tag on to her group because she was like the cool
Yeah.
group, and we'd just kind of tag on the end. And all of a sudden, everyone got up and decided to go get a drink, apart from me and Nat. So like everyone just disappeared. It was just us. I was like, oh my god. I'm left on my own with Natalie McQuiggan. And she was on about Bob and stuff, and then I was complimenting her and Nero and things, and I was like, oh, I could never ride Nero. And she was like, I actually think you'd be pretty good on Nero. And I was like, oh, no. Like, and little did I know, like, a few months later, I'd be going to try him and stuff. So it was just crazy how it all worked out. And there's so many little moments like that kind of, like, you know, looked into the future with him, but that we didn't know at the time. But it was funny.
Yeah, I love little moments
Yeah,
like that
it's
when
really
you can reflect on them.
Exactly, yeah. And then obviously I went to try him, and yeah, Nero literally completely changed my life. I mean, they all did in ways, but Nero was like flipped everything around for me.
Has it always been show jumping for you?
It was, yeah. As soon as I got Bob, it was always the jumping. I like dressage, I like things like that, but not really to compete in, just to kind of like, I love, you know, the different elements of it at home and schooling and stuff. It's like, it's not that I don't like dressage, as in I never school and never do anything. I love those elements, but I'm just not a dressage person, you know, like in the ring. It's just not my thing. But
and the cross country never took your fancy.
Oh my god, no. I quite like having a little pop around, if it's the right horse and stuff. I like having a pop around a schooling, you know, cross country schooling and stuff, where I can pick and choose what I jump and do the sniff and jump technique, which is where I allow the horse to sniff it for a good 5 minutes first, and then do a small trot circle and hop over it and trot, celebrate afterwards, and then load up and go home. That's my kind of cross country style. But yeah, I've never been into eventing.
Always the show jump.
Yeah. I have great admiration for anyone who events, and like the bravest people I've ever met. But often they also tend to find the show jumping. I always find they always say is their weakest part, which I find really interesting. And they're like, oh my god, now I jump anything cross country, but I'd never jump anything show jumping. I'm like, oh my god, give me like a 150 vertical any day over like a little log that's like this big.
Amazing. I want to speak about all the other ponies as well.
Yeah.
So, for anyone who doesn't know, how many ponies have we got at the minute?
We have 27, I think.
And how did we accumulate them all?
So, I like to describe myself as a bit of a mug. So, I'm great at buying them and then awful at parting with them, and I really feel for them. And I think from being in the industry, especially with Nero, and seeing how, like, the ponies at that level are treated very well, obviously, and they're really well looked after, as they are the horses at that level and things. And, you know, the higher the level you get, the more maintenance those horses need. So they're going to be looked after. But they also have a huge price tag on them. Mm-hmm. So something I've noticed very much over the years, and this isn't with everyone, by the way, as well, I don't want to, you know, stereotype, but a lot of these ponies don't actually live as long as others because they have such a huge price tag on, and they're all insured for so much money that when they get a tendon injury or something, that typically if the horse was worth a few £1,000s, you'd be like, let's just chuck it in the field for 6 months or just leave it and retire it in the field. Yeah. They tend to get then put to sleep because they're not able to perform anymore, and they'll never be able to do that job again. So to write off the amount of money that people have got in them, you know, for them to just sit in a field, not many people do. And so it was always a big thing for me. When we got to the end of my last year selling Nero, I was terrified because we all sort of knew with Nero that he wouldn't go on as long as other ponies jumping because he just had such a weird technique, which everyone loves. I mean, like, I loved, and the bucking and things, and the way he'd land, like, it was all, like, very incredible to watch. But then if you watch it from a medical point of view, you'd be like, oh my god, he's really overexerting himself over everything. And then sometimes he'd land sort of more flat than, like, feet, you know, front first, and like, you know, he'd just throw himself over everything because he just loved his job. But we always knew that would probably result in him finishing a bit earlier, and my fear was that if we didn't have him, because we always knew, like, we'd idolised him his entire life before we even had him, you know, that if he was with someone else, there was a chance we'd just get a phone call one day to say, Nero did a tendon, he's been put to sleep. And I just couldn't cope with that at all. Like, it makes me upset thinking about the possibility, even though he's just in the field enjoying himself and loving life, like, I just couldn't have ever let that happen to him. So yeah, we made the decision at the end to write off all the money that we'd put into Nero, which obviously he was a JA pony, which at the time, I think they're worth a lot more now, but they were still worth an astronomical amount at the time. We ended up taking like a little loan out. It was like a home improvement loan, and to be honest, Nero did improve our home, so we've just finished paying our loan on Nero now. Because everyone's like, oh, you must have been loaded to get Nero and stuff. And don't get me wrong, when we had just like 1 or 2 horses, we've never been like rich, but we've never struggled for stuff. Now we do with 27, but people always think the more horses you have, the more money it must mean you have. I think it's the opposite. Yeah. The more money they drain. But yeah, writing off all that money was a big thing. But it was a decision that we all made as a family. It wasn't just me that was like, oh, you know, I just want to keep Nero and stuff. Like, even my mum and dad were like, that as soon as me and mum were mainly like, oh God, I don't want him to go and stuff, thinking my dad at the time, I mean, he's a massive mug now as well, but at the time he was a bit more stingy. And we were thinking, oh my God, he's going to make us part with Nero. And we're just like, Dad, we were thinking maybe we don't sell Nero. And Dad was like, yeah, sounds good to me. He'll make the horse strides. We'll just take him up with us. We're like, okay. So that's what we did. And we took him up onto horses because he did make the horse strides, actually, I found a lot better than the ponies. Because pony doubles and trebles, I always found myself having to proper like sit up and really hoist him in between, because he'd have this tendency to jump out so far that he'd like land almost where he needed to take off. So in the horse distances it was great because I could just kind of let him flow through it and he'd just make all those distances really nicely. And yeah, he did a good couple of years doing the horse classes, and it was always great because you'd get the people that didn't know him. I remember taking him to do an accumulator at Bishop once, and it was like I think it was like 120, 130 in like the first bit. Obviously it's like against the clock, and then they had like a 145, 150 joker at the end. And there was these 3 women walking around in the warm-up ring that were like, what has she bought that here for? Like, that's not going to do it. And I was like, right, Nero, let's show them. And they all went in. I think one of them attempted the joker and had it down. The other 2 had various other problems in different places. And Nero just like flew around the entire thing, popped over the joker, beautifully, made it look so easy. And they were all just like... But yeah, he was just such a show-off, and the more people that you had in the audience, like if I messed up at a local show where there was no one there, he'd be like, oh right, you can just get lost then, you know. Whereas if I messed up at like I did at Horse of the Year show when I took him there, like he just carried me round because he was like, there's no way I'm gonna let this go.
Not letting you ruin this for me.
Yeah. It's like, there is no way I'm getting eliminated because of this girl. So poor Nero, all the shots I put him on at Horse of the Year show, because I'd ridden him so well leading up to it. And then little 16-year-old me just went through those purple curtains and just went, and like, just grabbed hold of him. I just did not let him go at all. I think after like the 3rd fence, I was just like fully just latched on. Nero was like, just let me go. So, you know, it's like jumping these 145 fences in there and stuff with like no space anywhere and stuff. And Nero's just like, I'm still gonna do it. Like, but yeah, he loved, I think his favourite class we ever did together was the Boy Found Bareback Challenge. He loved that.
I was going to ask you about that.
Absolutely loved it. And that's the reason I haven't done it since, was because of him, because he made that so special for me that I'm kind of scared that if I go back on any of my others now, they'll ruin it for me. Because Nero just made everything like that so fun and special, because he just loved the audience. Like, you know, we always used to say if there'd been a pony version of the Puissance, that would have been his best class, because he'd have just jumped anything, and like if the audience kept cheering him on, there'd be no stopping him, so he'd have loved that.
Amazing. Do you have a favourite memory?
From my show jumping, I'd have to say probably the Bareback Challenge. I've enjoyed that more than any other class I've ever done.
I feel like so many people know you for that as well, because whenever like I've spoke to my friends, I'm like, I'm going to see Kate Lewis tomorrow, and they were like, oh my God, she's the one who did the Bareback Challenge, isn't she? And I'm like,
really? I think we were like the 2nd year they'd ever run it that we started going. So we did like the 2nd and 3rd year with Nero, and then I was going to do the 4th year with Evie. But I didn't. Nero had made me quite cocky with my bareback skills. So
amazing.
I didn't realise how me and Nero just kind of like gelled in a way that I'll do anything. I only ride in bareback now and have done for the last 4 or 5 years at least. But Evie, I was like, why have I never thought about taking Evie before? Like, she's so fast. Like, we've got a really good partnership as well. I didn't realise Evie was quite as flat backed as she was, and she carries herself so low in front. And like around the corner, she always used to like scoot around the corners and move her head everywhere. It's just an absolute nightmare. She's fine with a saddle, but I got really cocky and I left it until about 2 days before the Bareback challenge. I was like, I'll just pop over a couple of fences at home.
What was that this year?
Ready. No, that was
a couple years.
That was 2018 or 19 or something. It was the first year that I didn't have Nero for it.
Yeah.
I was like, I'll take Evie, and my dad was like, watched me jump a couple of little fences at home, and I like was barely staying on. He was like, I don't think this is a good idea. I was like, it's fine, like just we'll try the course now. And I like just put a little bit of leg on and motored her on a bit. And she's so good against the clock as Evie, but she just went like an absolute rocket and landed after the first fence at home, just scooted around the corner, and I went flying.
Oh, God.
And I went flying. I landed on my head. My hat split in two, and my dad came across, and I was fine. I was like sat up at this point. I was okay. And my dad just picks up my hat. This is how much of a Yorkshire cheapskate he is. He just picked it up and just went, I can fix this, and just disappeared off into the house, super glued it back together. And that was my cask helmet that I used to not my cask one, sorry, my cap. And that was a couple of months before Cask sponsored me. And when they messaged me, they were like, are you looking for a hat sponsor? I was like, yes,
I am.
Please, God, I need a hat sponsor. It's a matter of time before this cap one is going to kill me now. But yeah, so the Bareback challenge was always my favourite, but I didn't do it that year, obviously, because I blame Evie. It was her fault, you know.
Already know this podcast is powered by Atlantic Harmony Equestrian, which is my equestrian clothing brand. I'm currently repping the navy quarter zip. We also have hoodies, t-shirts, leggings, beanies, literally all sorts. If you want to have a look and check out some of our collections, you can head across to www.atlanticharmonyequestrian.co.uk. I want to speak a little bit about confidence, because we have just touched on falls and stuff there. Have you ever had any severe confidence knocks?
Yes, and then I always find the funny thing with confidence things is over the years, when you're actually in them, it feels like it's never ending, and it feels like it's the worst thing ever and you're never going to get back out of it. And then afterwards, like, you actually regain your confidence as quick as you lost it, but no one ever notices that part. We're just like programmed to notice the worst bits about everything we do. So whenever you get it back, you never really pause to think, wow, I've just got all my confidence back. You only ever pause in life to think, I've just lost every shred of my confidence that I've got. So there's loads of times where I've lost my confidence, but actually I struggle to pinpoint them over the years, because I'm like, I don't know when I actually got it back, because I never paused in life to think, wow, I'm doing good again now.
Yeah.
I always just focused on the negatives. But I think the most recent one I've been through is kind of like something I'm still ongoing with now a little bit, and it's not a case, I think, more than a confidence knock, it's more something that I'm just so out of practice from where I used to be. Like, I used to compete at like higher levels regularly all the time, so now I'll like put a big offence up every now and again and be like, oh my god, why does this look big to me now? And I think more than it being just like that I've lost my confidence at that, I think it's just that I'm so out of practice with it that when I get back into it, it'll be fine. But yeah, like, I think it's just one of those things. I'm sure I had one after I broke my collarbone and stuff. I'm sure I remember that being a bit of a struggle, but I've had loads of confidence knocks over the years, and I think everyone has. I think they'd be lying if they said they didn't, you know. But the professionals are really good at brushing that under the carpet. And of course they're out so often. I think they don't have a lot of time to dwell, and they've got so many horses. I think the more horses you have on your team that are giving you confidence at different levels and stuff, then the easier it is to have a young horse that's going to sort of mess your confidence up a bit, because you're going to immediately get on something after and be like, right, let's take me round something big again. Which was exactly what I found when I had like Harry, my young horse at the time, going out when I had Nero and Evie. They were like my confidence giving horses, and they gave me the confidence to get on Harry and like really ride on and motor on with it. Whereas I think if you just had a young horse, it would be a nightmare, because all they're doing is looking to you for confidence and then destroying your confidence every time they make a mistake. So, you know, it's hard. I have a lot of appreciation for people who solely work with young horses and stuff. I'm like, where do you get your confidence from? Because I would have none if I was just working with freshly backed youngsters and taking them round like all these age classes and things for someone, because a lot of people just do that professionally, and I think that's so impressive, because that would wreck me all the time. I'd just be like, oh my god, this one's gonna buck me off, right? So yeah, I have great admiration for people doing that, but yeah, it's not easy, and I think a lot of people go through it, but it's one of those things. It will come back eventually, and try and notice when it does, and take a moment to give yourself a pat on the back and say that you've made it, because I think not enough people do that, and that's why we tend to forget when we've had them and when we haven't.
Have you got any tips for anyone who might be going through a confidence knock at the minute?
I think take things back to basics. Never be afraid to strip things right back. I used to always be almost embarrassed in a way. Like, if I was jumping 120s consistently and then I had a confidence knock and went out and did a few 80s and 90s and stuff, I almost used to think people would see me and judge me and be like, oh my god, there's that girl, like, she's lost everything, you know, she's all pathetic and stuff. No one thinks of you like that. Like, all these times we go out in the ring and things and we think everyone is judging us. They're not, you know. It's the same reason that we're not when we're stood at the side, you know. It's but I think it's something that really plays on your mind all the time. So never be afraid to think to yourself, do you know what, I just want to go and run around a few little classes for a bit, even if they're like literally cross poles on the floor. Like, go do something that you feel so confident in that you can just fly around and your horse can do the same, and just get that, you know, working back up to whatever level you were at before. And you'll get there, you know. But the more you try and stay at the level you were at and be scared and terrified at that level, then the longer it will take you to actually get consistently back there. I've always found it so much quicker to just go, right, I need to knock this back a bit and then work it back up again. Because, you know, if you're going out and enjoying and winning round at the little classes and stuff, then making that step back up is way less intimidating. Whereas if all you've had in your head to work on is loss and elimination and stuff, then your brain isn't there, and it's never going to be unless you let it have a bit of a win, even if it's just a little one.
Yeah, I think that's such good advice.
Yeah.
I want to speak about the riding school.
Yes.
Tell me how that all started.
So it was an idea that I had when I was a little kid, firstly, like when I was going to riding schools. I was like, maybe one day I'll set up my own. And then when we were in lockdown, I'd done a couple of years of like buying and selling for people, which I hated because, as I say, I'm a mug. So I hated selling other people's horses probably more than my own, because I had no sort of say at the end and where they actually went. So I hated that. And then COVID hit, obviously, and that kind of had to organically end because it was just so hard to move horses around and sell horses and things. We had one that we just like, it's a lovely pony, and she's still actually with the people that have her now. She's called Lady, and we had an absolute nightmare with Lady trying to get her to a new place, because firstly we had a vetting that she failed that she shouldn't have failed, because she had feather mites, and the vet actually rang the people and told her that they thought that she had severe arthritis instead, and we were like, what? She didn't have any x-rays done, she had nothing. Like, she failed on flexion, and I was like, oh well, that's one of those things a lot of horses do. It's like very 50-50, and anyone that's worked in that sort of segment of the industry before will know how like dodgy the flexion tests are. But yeah, she failed on flexion. She was just one step like still slightly off after the first few, and I was like, oh, okay, fair enough, she's failed, whatever. And then the vet rang this lady, and she was like, oh yeah, when she spoke to me after, she was like, yeah, we've had dogs with arthritis before, and like we just couldn't have a horse. I was like, sorry, like arthritis? And she's like, yeah, well, Lady's obviously got really severe arthritis. That's what the vet said. I was like, I'm sorry, he hasn't taken any x-rays, he's got no proof of that. So we then had to pay for x-rays to be done to prove that she obviously didn't have arthritis, which she didn't. So the people were then still interested, and it turned out the reason she'd been lame on the flexion was because she had a few feather mites in. So like obviously when they were pulling her leg up, that was just causing her a little bit of discomfort, so she'd go lame for an extra stride. And then so we sorted that, and that was all fine. And then they needed a strangles test doing for her to move to her new yard, which she got a false positive for when she got that as well. So then we had to do the scoping and stuff to prove, because we were like, it's not it's literally not possible that she could have strangles. She's been nowhere, like no one has for ages. None of the horses have strangles. Like we'd know that surely someone would have symptoms by now. And they were like, yeah, we do get these sometimes. I thought, well, you've had us panic now, thinking that we might have strangles on the yard somewhere. And anyway, she had the other test done, which came back clear, and then she eventually got to move off. But it was just such a faff with all the lockdown restrictions as well, getting her moved around from places. Like that was like our final, like, we can't do this anymore. This is so stressful.
So you wouldn't go back into the buying and selling?
No, oh my god, no, I hate selling horses. Like, we sold one last week and she's gone to the loveliest home possible, and we sold for very genuine reasons and stuff. She just doesn't like to be in over long periods of time in the winter, which, to be fair, I don't like any of them to be in that long, but the others do cope and they're easier to put places and stuff and do things with, whereas she just prefers to be out all the time. So I've sold her to a home it's literally like 5 miles down the road where she can do that, and she's way happier already, and it's brilliant. But even then I was like in tears on the morning and on the night and stuff. I was like, why am I crying? Like, she's going to like the best home ever and stuff, and it's so lovely with people I know and things, and I'm still so emotional about it. But yeah, no, I would never go back into it. It's not me. But yeah, so then the riding school came to fruition then. And we spent like a couple of years working on it and stuff and getting everything ready, because it's a lot of faff with getting the right ponies and the licensing.
So how many ponies did you have before you decided you were going to start the riding school?
Oh my gosh, you're testing me now. I have no idea. Probably around like the early 20s mark. Okay. For several years now, we've consistently had around 20, I would say. And then we bought a few in for the riding school. I had a few that I had already that I was going to use anyway. And I think we had like another 4 come in to use for the riding school, and that got us up to around like 28, 29, I think was the most we had. So yeah, we had roughly 8 that we used for the riding school, so it's only really small, but that was how I wanted it, because it was just me doing everything. We had staff for a very short period of time, but other than that, it was me doing all the tacking up, all the teaching, all the untacking, and the full everything. Fitting little kids with hats and stuff when they first arrived, going through all the paperwork, like just a lot of work.
Can you speak me through what a typical day would look like for you during that time?
Yeah, so in the summer it was easier because they'd all be outside. And then I'd just bring whoever was coming in for the lessons. I'd have mucked out their stables and put hay in for them and stuff, and they'd all get a bit of like either alfalfa or like ready grass or something before they work as well, because I'm very like mindful of ulcers and things like lining tummies. So yeah, they'd all get that as well, and then I'd give them all a bit of a groom, because some of the kids would groom on their own, but I'd make sure that I'd given them a good groom over first, so that everyone's feet were picked to my standard and stuff, so that I knew if like I didn't have time to go over everything again before someone got on, that they were fine. So then I'd tack up whoever needed tacking up for lessons, and yeah, depending on whether it was a group or a private and stuff, and yeah, the horses, like a big thing for me was that I didn't want the horses to ever be overworked, because growing up, I think the connotation most people have with riding schools is these horses that are just used for several hours a day and just constantly, I mean, they were when I was a kid as well. You used to arrive and they'd be like, well, your horse is already in there, so just wait, and the horses would be in there for at least 3 or 4 hours before they actually got a break, and they were just absolutely knackered as well. So we always had the thing of like, if they're 1 hour sessions, they'll work once a day. If they're half hour, they could do 2 little sessions a day. And they'll do like maybe 4 days a week tops. And so they've got, then one of those 3 remaining days might be a hacking day maybe, and then the other 2 will be just in the field. So they had very much like a normal horse routine in a way. And I always, as a coach as well, I was never one of these coaches that was like, go large, do a circle at A, then go large, do a circle at C, sort of thing, then change the rein. Like, I was always trying to make things, even for the novice riders, like making things interesting and using lots of poles and serpentines and lots of different exercises for the riders, but also mainly for the horses, so that every time they went in the ring, like in the arena and stuff, they had no idea what they were going to be doing. And I wanted to keep lots of variety for them. So even if they were doing 2 short sessions a day, both were different. Like, they never did the same thing, which was really nice. And they enjoyed their work when they went in the school. So, because a big thing for me was like, I don't want them to end up being like absolutely done with life in the school and stuff over the time. But yeah, no, they enjoyed it. We took the kids out to little shows as well and stuff, which the ponies love too. And yeah, they've had some great memories and stuff. We went down to Wales. We took one of them down to Wales. We were supposed to be taking two, but one of them was a bit lame before. One of the little ponies managed to get cast in her stable a few weeks before that. It was a nightmare. The one day she was in the summer. But yeah, and then the winter basically then just killed us. We did so well. Like, I'd never had a business be so successful, and like the demand for the riding school was insane. Like, it was absolutely crazy. Like, there was never a case of like, oh, we don't have enough people and stuff. Like, you could fill every single day 3-4 times over. Like, it was mad. We were having to turn most people away and put them on waiting lists and things to try and get even like a hack or something. Which was great. I mean, what a great position to be in as a business. But coming into the winter, it became an absolute nightmare, because obviously the winter we've had was so wet and so wild as well, with the wind and stuff. We're like right on the coast, so when it's like 40 mile an hour inland wind, out here it's like 60 mile an hour with like 80 to 100 mile an hour gusts and stuff. Like, it's insane, and I don't mind riding in it personally. I don't like it, but I will ride in it, and I know my horses, and I know my ability to sit things, and I can think for myself when I'm on the horses, and like, I know what I'm doing obviously with them. But it's very different when you're trying to teach little kids in an outdoor arena in those conditions and stuff. If the ponies do anything and you're trying to instruct them, they can't even hear you. You know? You're literally just shouting into the wind, and it's just not safe. So there were so many weeks in a row and stuff where we just could not run, and then people would get like sort of annoyed with me and things, like, why can't you run? I'd be like, because I don't want your child to die. And they'd be like, well, we saw you riding the other day. I'm like, yeah, that's different. Your child is 5 years old and not capable of riding around in these conditions. So and then loads of people are like, why don't you just make an indoor arena? I was like, because I don't have a spare like £250,000 sat somewhere to do that. I wish I did. So yeah, it just became a nightmare in the winter, and eventually we sort of struggled through from the September when it started to sort of mid-December. We really struggled through, and we were just fitting in everyone as much as we possibly could and whenever we could, and it was becoming a nightmare for me because, like I mentioned before we started filming and stuff, I've got ADHD, so like planning things and stuff, my brain is always very messy when it comes to stuff like that. So the more it became all over the place with the weather and everything, the worse it got for me in my head with planning things and actually knowing who was coming and when and stuff. And just like rescheduling things constantly was just making me so like I use the word depressed, like not depressed as in like actual depression. I just mean kind of like done in with life, you know. Yeah, so we struggled through, and then we closed in December, and we didn't reopen again until the rain stopped, which was like May kind of time. We expected it to be like March when we reopened, but it just kept raining and kept storming away. I think every week it was like a new storm. They must have gone through the alphabet like 3 times. It was crazy. But yeah, we got there in the end, but obviously it was a big struggle. And I'd saved up loads of money because it had been so successful through the summer. I'd saved up loads of money to start my fertility journey, and then I made that plunge with like you have to pay like a rather big chunk of money at once, and I did that in like the November. So then it got into the December and I had to close, and I was like, oh great, well done Kate, you should have spent all of your money on that. And so I had absolutely nothing, and I had no business, no nothing. So it was a nightmare through that winter trying to survive and stuff. And I owe a lot of that to my parents because they have to help me out so much with the horses financially that winter as well. Like not afraid to say that they did have to help me this last winter because it was just an absolute nightmare. There was no way I was going to get there on my own. But yeah, we reopened, and it just, this year with the horses, we've had one that's had to retire because he was 20 anyway. Like he hasn't retired for any like medical reason or anything. Like he's just ready to retire, and I'm always in favour of the horses over people. Like it's, you know, I do love people, but like they're my horses at the end of the day. I'd never put them through anything that they didn't want to do for like a monetary value sake or anything like that. So he was just done with it. He was just ready to retire. So he's retired, and then obviously I had Minnie, one of the little ponies who got cast and managed to do her back in a bit, and she had to have like 12 weeks off to resolve that without having to do any medical interventions, because she's only 8, so I don't want to go prodding around in her back and stuff. I was like, just leave her, she's fine. So yeah, we were like narrowed down on the ponies that we could use, which meant we were narrowed down on the people we could bring in, and I still stuck by that I wouldn't overwork the ponies that I had.
Yeah.
And yeah, so over that we had a much less successful year naturally, and same again, we had so much demand. I have phone calls every day coming in and be like, can I get my daughter booked in? Can I get my son booked in? Can I get booked in? I'd be like, unfortunately not, we've got absolutely nothing. But yeah, and then obviously the pregnancy came along, and finally, thank God, because that was very depressing through the winter as well, put that huge chunk of money down. I was like, oh, it's gonna work, and the clinic were like, yeah, it's gonna work, and then like the further it got, they were like, oh, it might not work. And I was like, oh my God, all this money. But yeah, we did get there in the end. And I've just kind of realised now that we don't have the ponies. It's at a point where it's like I'd have to invest loads of money that I don't have into buying a bunch more ponies, which are really hard to find for a riding school as well. And the market at the moment is like up here, you know. So, and then also at the same time, all my hours teaching were like out of school hours, and I know my son isn't even born yet, but like when he's like 3 years old, I don't want to be a mum that like never gets to see him, and you know his grandparents are having to pick him up from school all the time, and like he's just kind of waving to me from the house like as I'm teaching and stuff. Like that's not what I want to be at all. You know, so and it's such hard work physically and stuff as well, and the more horses you add, obviously the more hard work there is behind the scenes as well with it. So it's just not something I want, and I decided that now is the best time to end that, so that I can start something else before little one gets here, and get things up and running. And yeah, so I've got a few ideas of what I'm going to do now, which I won't share yet, because it just in case I watch this back in a few months and go, oh God, all those ideas really sucked. None of them came to fruition. But maybe next time we can talk about But yeah, that's pretty much where that's all at.
So how long did you do the riding school for?
I think about 18 months in the end. Yeah.
I take my hat off to you, like doing it all on your own.
It feels a lot longer. It feels like so much longer. I was doing this, I've got a video going on later where I had like a similar sort of like thing where I was like, how long have I been doing it for? And I was like, it feels like I've been doing it for like 10 years. I was like, oh my God, I don't think it's even been 2. I've already aged about 20 years in that time.
What was your parents' reaction when you said you wanted to open the riding school?
They were actually very supportive. They're like, if they're very much like, if I have a terrible idea, they will let me know. Like, they're not like, oh, well done, Kate, that'd be great. Like, they're like, no, that really sucks. Like, you have to not do that. And they were very supportive of the riding school. And to be honest, I think the biggest killer of the riding school for me was obviously that I don't have enough horses for the riding school, but I have way too many that are like unusable for the riding school. So like Shetland ponies that would kill anyone that went near them. Like all my young horses, my warm bloods and stuff, like they're proper show jumpers. They're not ones that anyone could get. Like if you got on like Harry and gave her a kick, I think you'd die. Like I don't know what would happen to you. You know, like if someone got on and gave an actual pony cub girl, I'd be like, oh my God, just death. Same with Tilly, all of them, like, you know, they're just not that type of horse, but at the same time I would never part with them. So it, again, my being a mug has put me into another predicament in life of like I'm always in trouble with being a mug, whether it's financial trouble or just like, you know, work and stuff. I'm like, oh great, my heart always wins over my head every time. So that's just who we all are. My parents are just as bad. Why they've got 320 cats at the rescue and stuff. So yeah, they're just as bad. They can't talk. So
fair enough. I would like to speak about, and I don't know what order is best to do this in, so maybe you're best to advise. I want to speak a little bit more about your fertility journey, and then I would like to speak about your sexuality, but I don't know which we should go for first.
I mean, maybe the sexuality will come into it better first, because it's like, that's sort of, I don't know, that's the part of the journey that I had to come to terms with first before the fertility. But yeah, I had a weird childhood growing up with it, because obviously, I'd say I realised fairly early compared to what I've heard a lot of people realise when they realise they're asexual. but I feel like I should probably say what it is first, so just in case anyone has
I
no
want you
idea.
to treat me like I know absolutely nothing,
Like-
because I am very uneducated.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be totally honest that I don't
There's
know an awful lot.
so many different sexualities now.
Yeah.
That I'm uneducated as well. But I think in this day and age, as long as you're open
Yeah.
to like learning about stuff, I don't think it matters. I don't think people should be penalised. You know, like if you've no idea what something means, it doesn't mean that you're a terrible human being. It just means there's so many different things going on now, and which is great because people have got different sort of places they can put themselves to feel like they are themselves, and that's brilliant. And it's certainly helped me so much and stuff as well. But yeah, I think you do get some people that are like, how dare you not know what this means and stuff. I'm like, all right, just calm down.
No,
like,
I want to learn. I want to learn.
Teach me. But yeah, asexuality, it's quite a broad spectrum. So it's generally it's a lack of like interest in people sexually, but sometimes, like, depending on the person, some people are still like sexually active but just not as sexually active as like your average, you know, person who is sexually active regardless of what sexuality they are. Some people are sort of asexual, and then a little bit, I think it's demisexual as well, where they will only sort of engage sexually in someone that they really are really close to.
Okay.
And then not as often as others. And then other people are completely like not interested in being sexual with anyone at all. Some people aren't interested in like sex but want relationships with someone, so just like the romance side of things. And then other people want nothing and want nothing to do with anyone, which is me. So yeah, growing up was kind of weird for me because I was born asexual. Like, I don't think it's a thing you realise over time, but it's not a thing you just decide you're going to be. Because, to be honest, if I could decide, I'd decide to be something as easy as possible. Like, I'd love to be in a relationship with someone, whether it was like a man or a woman or whoever. Like, I'd love to be someone who could be in that position because I think it would make my life easier, and like, I don't want to be alone, but at the same time you can't force yourself to be something that you're not. Which was something that I struggled with in my later teens, because I was I realised I was asexual and I was trying to force myself to be a romantic asexual and have a partner. I was talking to all these different people and stuff, which I'll get into in a minute. But yeah, growing up, it was like in school, no one was interested in sex and stuff. And then we got to like years sort of like 9, 10, and people started talking about it at school and stuff. And they'd be like, you know, it's celebrities and stuff. They'd be like, oh, wouldn't you just love to get with like, I mean, Zac Efron or something, whoever it was when we were like kids. And I'd be like, yeah, totally, like, of course, he's so my type. And be like, just kind of trying to fit in with the crowd. Yeah. But at the same time, I was thinking to myself, like, I'm probably just a bit behind. Like, I'm just a bit slow, you know. And then we got into like college and stuff, and people were actively like having sex and things, and I was still completely not interested at all, and I was still kind of thinking, maybe it's just I'm still just not quite there, you know, that's normal, it doesn't matter. And then I got into like my late teens, early 20s, and I was like, okay, I'm still really not interested at all, maybe I need to look into this a bit. And that was when I did my research and I found asexuality, because I had no idea what it was before. And I've never had a moment in my life where I clicked so quick. Like, I was literally reading about these other people that were asexual and describing their experiences and stuff. I was like, oh my god, we're like the same person. Like, this is where I belong. This is the little group that I fit in with. And as soon as, it's incredible how out of place you can feel, and then as soon as you have somewhere to put that part of yourself, you just feel like it all clicks and your happiness levels just go up and you feel like you're accepted somewhere. And I think that's what a lot of people need. They need somewhere where they feel like they can be them and they're accepted and they're one of other people, rather than just like completely on their own and feeling these things on their own. So yeah, and then I had a couple of years where I decided to myself, like, I was still going to have a relationship, I was still going to get married one day, I was still going to have all of that, just not the sexual side of things. So I was talking to people, there's very few asexual dating apps and things, but I was on the ones that there was. And I remember I met this guy, and he was literally like me in male form. Like, he was the loveliest person I've ever spoken to. We used to chat on the phone and stuff all the time. Like, we had great chats and things. I was like, this guy's he must be the one, like, obviously. And then It's the day I realised that I was what they call aromantic asexual, which is like not interested in anyone or anything, was the day he popped up on Instagram with this other girl, who I think was probably just like his sister or someone, but it was like a proper like, you know, like cuddly photo with this other girl, where most people would have then been like, oh,
Who's that?
who is that girl? And so, whereas my immediate reaction was that, oh thank God, like I don't have to talk to this guy anymore. And I thought, that's weird, because normally most people would be like either sad or like confused or angry, and I was immediately, my brain just went, oh thank God, all that effort, like I don't have to do it anymore. And I thought, right, yeah, I'm not interested in people like that. So that was kind of when I realised, but then it also became kind of a scary world for me, because I thought to myself, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life. And at the same time as like, not, it's so strange, because this is why I say like, if I could choose, I'd be different, because I'm not someone who wants to be alone forever, but at the same time, I don't want a relationship with anyone and stuff, so it puts me in this really weird boat on my own somewhere. I say on my own, with a bunch of other people who are aromantic asexual who probably feel exactly the same, where it's like, I don't want to live the rest of my life alone, but at the same time, I can't force myself to be this person that I can't be. So yeah, and then, but I'd always known that I wanted a family, and that made that kind of confusing for me as well, because I was like, how am I going to do this? Like, this is going to cost me a fortune as well. And like, is it right to do this? Because that was something that I had a big thing with in my head, like a big battle in my head for a few years, because I think I sort of realised that I definitely wanted children. I was definitely asexual and everything when I was around like 19, 20. The 1920s. Long time ago. But yeah, I sort of realised around then, and I had this battle with myself for a few years, because I was thinking, is it morally right for me to bring a child into the world on my own when I've grown up with my dad, who I love, and my mum and my dad, who have, like, you know, I've been very fortunate. They're still together. They're, you know, we're like a stereotypical happy family in that sense. And like, is it right for me to bring a child into this world that isn't going to have a dad? And how is that going to be really confusing for them growing up? And like, are they going to get teased about that at school and things? And like, how is that going to affect them? Am I doing something wrong? And it was a long time before I sort of realised that that actually doesn't come into play. And there's so many people, families that like, I mean, there's kids that their dads are absolutely useless and like haven't been in their lives since they were born anyway, so they may as well not have a dad, you know, and they're happy because as long as they have people in their lives that love them, it really doesn't matter. And I always knew that I could give my child enough love on my own, and more than enough for both parents and everyone else as well. So that was when I decided I was gonna go for it as soon as I could, and I was very broke for many years with all my horses and being a mug. But I actually started a little diary back, I think it was in about 2021, writing to my future child in this little diary form. So I've got this little diary. There's not masses of entries in it because I'm shocking ADHD again. I'm shocking at writing, keeping up to date with blooming diaries and stuff. But I looked through it the other day, and it's so cute because it's like all the entries of like me going through my life and like trying to save up money, and like there'd be entries where I'm like, oh my God, I've saved up like £2,000 or something, and they'd be like, never mind, horse gone lame, it's all gone. It'd be a nightmare. But it was like really sweet, and on the first page it says something like, I just wanted to like let you know that I'm gonna love you no matter what, and then in brackets like, unless you're a serial killer, please don't be a serial killer. And, like, it's like such a stupid book, but it's one of those things that I think he's probably gonna love one day when he's older. So I'm making all of that into like a scrapbook and stuff. But yeah, and then my fertility journey started properly, like physically going to exams and stuff in November last year. Because I was told actually from my GP last summer, like coming out of last summer, that I couldn't have children, and that I had fertility issues that would mean I couldn't have children. And they were actually quite mean to me at my GP as well, because even initially when I was asking for like a blood test and stuff, and you know, like examinations and like physical examinations and stuff, and because I did have symptoms with like my cycles and stuff that weren't right anyway, that needed looking into, because I was quite concerned at the time with like cervical problems and things like that. And they were on about like, do I want kids and things, and then talking about like who my partner is and stuff. I was like, no, I'd want to do it on my own and do like either IUI or IVF and stuff. And they were like, well, you shouldn't be doing that like on your own and stuff. Like, that's not right. And I was like, God, these people are telling me, these doctors are telling me that this isn't right. Like, you know, but they were quite mean with me, really. And then I got in touch with my fertility clinic, who were absolutely lovely, and we had like initial meetings and stuff. We talked through everything, and my doctor there initially was like, I'm sure you'll have no issues, like I've reviewed the bloods from your doctors and stuff, and we can get around this, that and the other with this, and you know, with these medications, and you're so young, like it'll all be fine. So it's all like filled with loads of positivity and hope at the start of it, and I genuinely thought it would be so easy at that stage, because they'd been so positive about it. I was like, I'm gonna be pregnant in like a month, like like first try, it's gonna be fine. And then obviously there's like the donor side of things as well that I looked into, and you don't get like masses of details on your donor, but I did choose a donor that looked a bit like me, because I thought it would be nice for my child to look like me. And I just thought, if I choose someone that really doesn't, odds are,
I don't know if this is a really stupid question. How does it work? Like, do you what do you get, like, how do you choose?
Oh my God, it's so, I found it the most awkward part of the whole experience, because I've bred horses before and it's exactly the same. It's so weird. And they showed, you don't see adult photos of them, but you can usually see photos of them as a child. And you get loads of information, and the best thing is you get genetic information, which means like you can, if you have yourself tested, your donor's already tested, so you can really limit the chance. Obviously you can't completely annihilate the chance ever, but like you can really limit the chance of your child ending up with specific things and stuff, you know, genetically, which is really good. So, and you also get information on like their grandparents and like great grandparents, what did they die of, how long did they live and stuff, like do cancers run in the family, if so what type, and things. So like it's really handy to know, and you can kind of pick and choose from that. And say like, so say, I mean, my mum had breast cancer at one point, so she's been the only person in our family that's had breast cancer, but say if I was looking at donors and like his mum had breast cancer, or his great grandma had breast cancer, then I'd maybe think that was not the right match, because you'd be putting a lot of those genetics into it. So it's really cool.
How long did it take you to decide?
Not long.
Oh, really?
I didn't stay on looking at it for too long. It was very much like a case of it was like three main criteria for me. It's like someone who generally looks a little bit like me. So blonde hair, I think he has curly hair as well, blue eyes, and like not too tall. I think my donor's about 5'11", I think, so like tallish, but not like skyscraper tall. And then like just kind of not like super fit looking, and as in, but like fit, physically fit, if that makes sense. Like I didn't need a blooming bodybuilder or anyone, but like just someone who's like not morbidly obese, or like, you know, any issues there and stuff, and you know, like no diabetes, anything like that, and just you know, generally healthy. That was like my first one. My second one was that they were I forget what it's called, like an open donor, where they basically, my child would have a choice, so that when they reach 16, they can start, if they're really interested in who their donor is, they can start looking into that. And when they're 18, they get all their donors' information, so they could contact them and any siblings that they have out there if they want to, which was important to me, because I just don't know whether my child
what they're going to want
to know, and I want them to have a choice. So that was important to me. Because I've spoken to loads of people who are actually like donor children, and some of them are like, I was really interested in knowing, and then others are like, I really couldn't care less, it didn't mean anything to me, it's not who I am at all. You know, so it's just really interesting, but it was so 50-50. I was like, I just want to make sure he has the choice. And then the third thing was the motility, so like just how, because it's all like, it's like horses, it's all ranked on like how fertile people are and stuff, so it's crazy. But it's such a minefield, and I didn't stay on it for very long, because it kind of freaked me out a bit. It was literally like buying like sperm for the horses and things. It's like, no, I don't like it. Just get this bit over and done with, I don't really care. So genetically and stuff, my donor I'm really happy with, and like all his grandparents and great grandparents, so like some of his grandparents are still alive. I think they're in like the late 90s, early hundreds and stuff. So like they've all had good long lives and stuff. All's looking well there. But yeah, such a minefield, honestly.
And then speak about the process, like how was the actual pregnancy and stuff been so
Yeah,
far?
so the process itself was like very much, because I wasn't really nervous about any of it until they actually said like we can finally go ahead and do the procedure. And then I was like, it all of a sudden dawned on me that all the money I'd put into it and stuff, I only had this one shot really for at least for now, you know, because I'd saved so much with the intention of probably doing 2 goes, but then like we had so many problems on the way that money had slowly dissipated into other things with it. And yeah, so in the end it was like, this is my one shot. And I was like, oh my god, it's so, they say it's about, I think at my age and things, I think the odds were about 13% out of 100, you know, so
Low.
it's quite low really, of it working on the first attempt. So I was very much like, it's probably not going to. And I'd had medication before, called the trigger shot, which means like when you're ready to ovulate but haven't ovulated yet, it makes you ovulate,
Right.
so that they can do the procedure. So, but what that does is it gives you the pregnancy hormone. So the pregnancy test that you take test for that hormone. So I had to test that out first, which takes like 2 weeks almost to leave your system, sort of between like 7 and 14 days. So basically the tests where you've got the 2 little lines on those little strip tests that you get, I had to do those daily, and it started off as a really strong positive, which it would from the drugs, and then slowly that fades out, and the idea then is that if the procedure's worked, that line will then get stronger again until it's then a positive, and if it hasn't, it will just continue to fade until it's gone and it won't come back. So it did just that, and it got to, I think it's around like day 8, it vanished completely. And I was like, oh great, this is all over. And then like day 10, I got a really, really faint line, and I thought to myself, because I'd left it for a bit too long as well, and they call them evaporation lines. So if you leave it beyond the time you're supposed to look at it, then a line will form there anyway. And I sort of thought, it's probably just that, like, and then the next one I took was the same, and then it started to get a little bit dark, and I was like, oh, I think it might have worked. And by the time it got to 2 weeks, I took one of the digital ones, and I was like, this probably won't test anything, and it came up as pregnant, and that was when I sort of knew. And I have this video, and I think the first thing I say in the video, because it was taken at about 3 a.m, was, oh my god, I look like so I was like, I'd just come off the yard, I was like absolute mess, my hair looked terrible and stuff, and I'd pictured, these like TikToks that you see online of these people that look absolutely stunning, and they're like all in makeup and stuff, and they find out and they're like, oh my god, this is so emotional. So I just stood there with a stick like, oh my god, I look rubbish. Like, that was like the first thing I said. But no, it's a really cute little video, and yeah, it'll be again something really fun to show him. I've been like doing the little vlogs all the way through and stuff, like nothing big, but like just nice little bits here and there, for him to see. So
no, it's so exciting. I bet you're buzzing.
Oh my god, I can't wait. Like, and it sounds really like weird, but like it's, for me, from the moment that I found out I'm pregnant, I've never felt alone again after that. And I feel like that's my, like, he's my person now. Like, I've got my little family now, and I'm happy. And hopefully, my plan is to have 2 children. I'd like to have 2.
That was going to be one of my questions.
Because me and I grew up with my brother, and I know siblings, like, fight and stuff sometimes, but at the end of the day, it was so nice having someone growing up that was, with me all the time, and someone to look out for me and stuff, and I want him to have the same. So yeah, a little best friend. In
your absolute, obviously I know it doesn't work like this, but in your dream world, when do you think you would like to have your second child?
Probably a similar distance apart to me and my brother. So I think the plan would be, obviously I'll have him early next year, end of January, and then till I have the rest of that year off, and then probably look into doing something again the following year, so that they're around 2 years apart by the time the second one's born. Life doesn't always work out that way, but in a perfect dream world, then that's probably what I'd plan. But I just want the 2. But yeah, knowing my luck, I'll probably have twins next or something. Like, oh my god. Oh dear, but yeah, that would be interesting, and ideally, in a perfect world again, I'd probably want a girl the second time, just because I think it's everyone's kind of, in a perfect world, it's the goal to have like one of each, but I wouldn't really care. Like, if it was a boy, I'd still be just as chuffed. I'm not one of those that's like, sulk something wrong.
Yeah, when you see them at the gender reveal and they're like,
oh my god, they're going all grumpy and stuff. Like, you do realise they're probably going to watch this back one day and see that you absolutely didn't want them at all. Like, so yeah, I'd be just as chuffed either way. But yeah, perfect world, and like a boy and a girl. And I've got my boy, who hopefully will continue to grow and be fab. But yeah, and then hopefully I get a little girl one day. Or if not, then my future second boy will be watching this going, God, my mum didn't want me at all.
No, it is so exciting, and congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'm nearly halfway now, so very exciting. And yeah, hopefully, we've also said if he's allergic to cats or horses, he's got to go back as well. To get back to the clinic and just be like, this is not what I ordered.
No, it's okay. I've got loads of friends that are allergic to horses and they still ride, so it'll be alright.
That's all right then, yeah. As long as he doesn't have any severe allergies to them, that's fine. Or if he ever says that he hates them or something, then I can just have to give him back. Like.
I would like to speak about your social media a little bit. Tell me how that all started.
So the socials, obviously, I made the Blob The Cob account in, I think, 2012, I think. And we had another one before. I'm trying to remember the name of it. I think it was Dreamer, and then I think it was my birthday. So it would be 110499, I think, if anyone wants to look it up. I think that was what it was. But yeah, we had that for a couple of years, and then we made the Blob The Cob account, and me and my friend Becky. And Becky used to do all my editing early on, by the way. For anyone who's interested, all the early edits, she did. I think the first one I did was to a Coldplay song. I think it was my 2000 subscriber edit, because back then YouTube was very different. It wasn't vlogging, no one ever vlogged, no one picked up a camera and actually turned it to face them. It was all like fancy to music with like flashy editing and stuff. So I completely freaked out because it was when Becky went to college and she was like, I just don't have time to do any editing anymore. She was like, I love it, but I just don't have time. And I was like, what am I going to do? My 2,000 subscribers are going to be absolutely shook. So I went on and had to edit it myself. And I think I sent it to her and she put some like flashy effects on for me. But that was the first thing that I actually made myself. And then after that, I really got into the editing. And I kind of wish that YouTube had stayed a little bit more within that realm with the equine thing, because I loved making like the inspirational videos and stuff were my favourite thing to make. I loved a good dramatic audio to edit all my fails into. Like we still watch them back sometimes to me and my mum and dad, and we're like, oh, I wish it continued like this, because there's some great edits in there. But yeah, I think my favourite one that I made was probably one called Fly, I think the video is called. And that was, because I loved the beginning, it was all like really dramatic editing and stuff. And by dramatic, I mean it was like fast-paced in black and white. That's dramatic YouTube editing for you. But yeah, and then I had to kind of like change with the times. I think it was Ali, Equestrian was one of the first, and Lauren, who's Eddie's gun, she was on YouTube, whether she still is, I'm not sure. I think she's just Lauren Allport now. But they were like the big ones when I was a kid, like, and they used to make the edits, but then they changed with the times and got into the vlogging. So that was when I started it as well. And then I think it was around like 2016 kind of time, which maybe like a year after I did, that like Esme came on scene and stuff. And like I always found it mad because Esme came up and filmed a video with me once, and it was when she had like God knows how many subscribers, like 300,000-400,000 or something. There's me sat there with like however many I had at the time, like 30,000 or something,
which is still low,
a lot, but like it's not like 500,000. And Esme turned up and she was like, oh my god, I used to like love you and watch you all the time when I was a kid. I was like, really? She's like, yeah, I was such a big Blob The Cob fan. And I was like, what? It's so mad. But like, yeah, YouTube just changed so much in those years. And then now you've got like, I think some of the biggest YouTubers out there are like, obviously Esme still, and then like Harlow and Meg as well, like who are just absolutely killing it at it. And I still feel like part of my heart lays with the editing of those like dramatic little inspirational videos. And but yeah, the vlogging and stuff is really cool, and it's brought a different side to YouTube completely. And I think in some ways it's made editing things easier, especially if it's just a vlog, because they're just basically stitching videos together and that's it. But yeah, like it's changed things completely. And in terms of working with brands and things, it literally, my first sponsor was a neck rope sponsor, and they literally just sent me a free neck rope and that was it. That would be like where it ended with everything. It was just like, we'll send you this free number or something. It'd be like, oh my god, someone's sending me a free number. And now it's like, it's insane. Like some of these companies and stuff, like it's now, we're looked at in more of a business aspect now, rather than a like just kids having fun on YouTube and stuff, like, which in some ways is great, but I'm like we were talking about again before we started filming and stuff, like that's a part of my life that I never really got into, was the like business side of the social media, because I think for the longest time I didn't believe that I could make a business of it like that, and then another part of me just didn't want to, like, because I've always loved my sort of very authentic little channel from where I came from and stuff, and I've just never wanted to make it into this huge business. And I think the times where I have tried have been some of the times where I've been my most like depressed in life, because I just don't feel like it's me, and I feel like it's just someone else. So it's it's been a bit of a journey over on the YouTube, but I'm excited to do a bit more with it now.
Yeah, what's plans with it?
Yeah, so I want to get back into, saying in the video that's going on later, I've had some major problems with editing, because the Wi-Fi at our actual main house is awful. Like, it's, when I say awful, it's so bad. I don't know what's happened to it, because it started off okay when I first got my computer to do the editing on. Yeah, typically I spent a massive fortune on this new computer that could do everything and stuff. So I was like, this is it. And then like a few months later, the Wi-Fi just absolutely plummeted. And it's like hardwired into the Wi-Fi, and still, like, I feel so sorry for them. I keep having to talk to the people from Africa where I went at the beginning of the year, because that was the holiday of a lifetime.
Yeah.
And I've barely spoken about it, and I feel like they're gonna think I'm so ungrateful, and I've just been on this holiday, I've got back like, right, that's done. Like, whereas I loved that holiday, and it was genuinely some of the best memories I've ever had in my life, and it was such a bucket list thing, and I've got such amazing footage, and I've seen like none of it, because she sent it all across to me, and bless her, she's organised it all so well and stuff. It looks brilliant, and I can't actually see any of it until it's downloaded, because of the format that it's on, and the computer, Wi-Fi and stuff. But downloading a single video of it, because the Wi-Fi is so bad, can take between 3 and 4 days for one video, and I cannot touch the computer at all in that time, otherwise it'll just crash and die anyway. So she was talking to me the other day, she was like, I'm going to delete some of these files, like, if you've got everything you need. I was like, please don't, because I've only got like 3 days of the whole trip. I've been downloading it since I got back, and I've still only got like 3 or 4 days. And she was like, don't worry, we'll put it on a hard drive and send it over. I was like, thank you, because we're moving the computer down here soon, so then I should be able to get everything and edit it. But it's been torture for me as well, because I really want to see these videos. Like, I keep getting like little glimpses through them, and I'm like, oh, these look so cool. Like, I want to, even if I just put some reels on in the meantime on Instagram and stuff, I want people to see it. And I've got all these videos that I want to make for them, and I keep reassuring them, like, I promise you it will go.
It will
on.
come.
Like, it will. I'm not the most ungrateful human being in the world. Like, I feel so guilty, but they've been so understanding, and they are genuinely the loveliest people in the world. But yeah, they're the sort of like people I want to work with in the future, and that, I mean, if you can get, I mean, I guess it's a collaboration, but like, it didn't feel like, they feel like family obviously now, like, they're just such lovely people. But yeah, I definitely want to go back there as well, and it's definitely themed my son's early years as well, because his room and everything's all African themed, and like, yeah, all his clothes and stuff, all like giraffes and lions and elephants and things.
Aww. So
yeah, it's definitely influenced that, but yeah, it's incredible, absolutely amazing.
No, that's so fun. Have you got any tips for anyone who wants to start their social media?
Ooh, I think I'm not the one to really, I'm not a really good example of this, but consistency is key, which is why my YouTube and everything has seen such a dramatic fall over the last like year.
You're so harsh on yourself.
I'm my own worst critic, but like I'm shocking at it, because I said to you earlier, if anyone puts any pressure on me at all of like, you will post on this day at this time, I'm like, I can't do it. I just can't. Like, I go full ADHD. It's like if I have an appointment on a day or something, it'd be like at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'll wake up at like 5:30 in the morning and be like, well, I've got no time to get anything done today at all, like, because I have to be there at 5 and it's 10 minutes away. What am I going to do? And my parents are like, what are you on about? You can literally do anything with your day. I'm like, I don't have time to ride, I don't have time to do anything. And that's how my brain functions with the online stuff as well. I'm fine if it's just like my own ideas, I'll get loads of stuff done, and I'll like tick through tons of things. But as soon as someone's like, you need to post that at that time at this place. I'm like, oh my god, I can't do it. Like, I'm never gonna get it done in time. So yeah, it's consistency is key, and then post the things that you want to post, like, you know, because at the end of the day, if you're passionate about stuff, then you'll draw in the right people that are also passionate about those things. Like, don't try and fit yourself into a little box somewhere. You know, just do the things you're passionate about. And something that I really want to do in the next year or so, especially after I've had my little baby as well, because I don't know how much I'm going to get done of it beforehand, but I want to put a lot more rescue content out there, because I think no one's seen that part of my life at all, and it's such a huge segment of my life. Like, we spend so many hours of every single day rescuing animals, obviously predominantly cats, but we're also going into wildlife as well, because there's a bit of a gap around here. There's a couple of wildlife rescues that are within our area, I guess. They're not close, but they're like, you know, within a couple of hours away. Yeah. But they've made it so that they have opening hours, so we are open 24/7. Like, you could call us in the middle of the night, and we'd probably still be up, to be fair. But,
I've seen you speaking about this. Like, I don't go to bed till like 4 a.m.
We just never sleep, and but my poor child is gonna have like no sleep routine. It's gonna be like breakfast is served at 2 a.m, mate. Like, but yeah, like, there's a bit of a gap, because at the moment with wildlife like deer, foxes, badgers and stuff, these places are open like 9 till 5 and that's it. And I mean, as anyone who drives, you know, the most likely time you're going to run into a deer or something is in the early hours of the morning or late at night, you know, when the deer are actually out and active, when the roads are quieter. So at that point they have no one, and we hate that. And obviously the police that go out and stuff, like, if they're a threat to the road and they've got nowhere to take them, they have to euthanize them, which a lot of the police hate doing as well, especially because some obviously do need to be euthanized. They're in too big a state to ever be released, but there are plenty that, from having spoken to the police in this area around here recently, that could be rehabilitated, you know, released back into the wild, that they have to euthanize because there's just no one there to help. So that's a segment that we want to go into. So I'm going to be a bit of like the head of that team so we've got like the cat team, and then we'll have like the wildlife team. So that'll be like my duty. So my coming weeks are going to be spent learning a bit more. I know my basic knowledge is good of all like wild animals and stuff, but obviously I need to have quite extensive knowledge in all these places. So I'm doing a deer course in the next couple of weeks.
That's so different. I love that. Which is
really cool. But I think that would be something that would be so interesting that people would love to see.
Yeah, I would love to know more about that.
Yeah, and like see the rescues and things, because they're so different to deal with to other animals. And then like even the more difficult cat rescues and stuff we do, some of them are like really intense and things, and we just do them every day and no one ever sees them. So I keep saying to the family, like, we're going to have to video some of these and put them on. And I mean, I put one on once, which was actually a very casual one, but it was in between two little walls, and I put it on my TikTok. I think it went on Instagram as well, but it was mainly on TikTok, and it went absolutely viral. And it was so just nothing to us. Like, we just go and do it every day. Like, and I'd had to go to that one because I normally get called on the cat rescues where someone has to squeeze into a tiny little gap, which I'm not gonna be able to do for much longer. But yeah, it was between these two garages, and it was literally, I know exactly the size of it. It was the size of my size 5 foot, because my foot turned sideways and it blocked it. So that was how big it was, and I had to just like, I'm not claustrophobic in the slightest, so I just
I couldn't do that.
Climbed in, got these little kittens out and stuff, and then just climbed back out again, and you could like hear me scraping against these walls and stuff. I was covered in like little wall scrapes and stuff, and everyone went absolutely like wild for it, and we were just like, oh my god, this is so strange. Like, it got something like 2.73 million views or something, and like, it was just such a casual, everyday in the life thing for us. Like, we just do stuff like all the time. So yeah, that's definitely
I would love to see more content like that.
I think whether I put it on my channel or make a different channel where it maybe fits in more on its own, that's something I'm going to have to think about. But yeah, it's definitely something I want to put out there more and show the rehabilitation side of things and all of that,
Yeah. I want to ask you, so this podcast is called Beyond the Stable, so I want to know what you do out with horses. I know we have just spoken about a lot, but is there anything else that you like to do for fun in your spare time?
Oh my god, my spare time.
Not much of that.
Sleeping, eating, just kind of the basic human necessities. I do wish if I had more time, I'd love to go climbing more, because I love climbing, and it really helps with your fitness for the horses, because it uses every muscle. There's very few sports out there that actually use everything. Riding is one of them, and climbing is one of them. I think swimming you do, but it's kind of weightless, so it's not as hard on your body. I'd love to do more of that as well, because I think at the end of my pregnancy, when I can't ride as much, I'm going to need something to do. So I'm probably going to end up doing a bit of swimming. But yeah, climbing I absolutely love. Bouldering, climbing with a rope or whatever, like whatever it is, I love climbing. So yeah, I'd love to do a bit more of that. But I know if I go now, because you're not supposed to do heights when you're pregnant, and I'm more than happy that I would be able to climb all the easy routes and stuff fine. I'd never ever fall off them in a million years. But I just know myself so well, and I know I'm so blooming cocky that if I do those easy routes, I'll then go like, I'll do a black route, and then I'll go flying off it somewhere and spend the next few weeks like paranoid as hell that I've done something to him. So I'm like, just don't go until after the pregnancy, it's fine. Like, but I mean, even in my early pregnancy, I was still like climbing trees to rescue cats and things. Like, I'm very cocky when I'm climbing, and I really shouldn't be, because like everyone always says to me as well, like, it's a really bad habit to have, and I have had some falls from height. I think it was my biggest fall from height was about 25 feet, something like that, and that was in the barn onto a concrete floor. And I climbed up the beams in the barn, and I used to do it all the time. There's videos of me doing it. I just do it so seamlessly all the time. And I did it once, and I did it in wet shoes, and I did it to rescue a cat, and my feet just went out from underneath me, and I had nothing. And my dad was there, and he watched it happen. He was like, to this day, it's one of the scariest things he's ever seen, because it was such a big fall, and it was straight onto concrete. But I just remember it was really, like, peaceful. Like, it was weird. Like, it was such a strange feeling. And like, you see all these people on the films and stuff that like fall from height and they're like screaming and like, like going absolutely nuts, but it was just like you didn't have time for any of that. It was just kind of like da 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 da, and they're just like smack on the floor. And I knew immediately. I actually broke my heel, and I knew straight away that I'd done something. But again, I'm so cocky, and I'm really like, I never like to admit that I was wrong either. And my dad's just there like, you all right? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely, I'm fine. It's like, can you stand up and walk? It's like, yeah. It's like, well, go on then. Let's see. Like, of course I can. God. And there's me like hobbling around like, see, I'm absolutely fine. Kind of like, have you ever seen Family Guy? Yeah. You know, Horse, when he's like going to shoot the horse and he's like, I'm great. And it's like, that was like me after my fall. But yeah, that kind of taught me a lesson as to like, don't be quite so cocky about it. Like, it can happen. No matter how good you are at something, anything can happen, so you do have to be careful. But yeah, that's one of my favourite sports. If I couldn't ride, I'd do that. Like, that would be me.
My final question for you is, if I could get someone on the podcast to speak to, who do you think I should get? Goodness. They can be a professional, an influencer.
Oh my word, what a great question, because you've had some amazing people on already.
Yeah, so we've been very privileged.
Because I could list loads of the people that you've had on already, but like, trying to think of someone new. Have you had Meg on yet?
No.
I think Meg would be great on here. Esme would be great too, if you haven't had her on yet. And I actually think it would be really interesting to hear from Harlow, because
I think she would be amazing.
Like, the younger generation growing up on social media, like I grew up with like social media hate and things back in the day, and like all that kind of stuff, but YouTube was a very different place, and like how things have changed now, like, and dealing with all of that at such a young age, like I had to deal with it as a kid, like at her age and stuff, but like I said, it was just so different. I think it would be so interesting to see someone modernize that generation of like growing up in this world, because it's just crazy, and I think she's dealt with it so well, because at that age, I mean, obviously when you get into your 20s and stuff, like, I often find, no hate gets me anymore, nothing. Like, someone could say something to me and I'm just like, oh, whatever. Like,
have you had any bad experiences with hate?
Yeah, like, but again, it's never really bothered me that much, because I think by the time I was getting, like, I had some hate when I was younger, when I was, like, around Harlow's age, a little bit younger, and it's sort of, it gets you, but there's just not masses of it. And it was mainly Ask FM back then. I don't know whether you remember that.
Yeah, I don't.
Where, what a great concept. You can just go and anonymously ask people questions, like, what could possibly go wrong? So yeah, it was predominantly like through there, and then you get the odd YouTube comment and stuff, but usually people do stick up for you on things like YouTube and Instagram and stuff as well, which, happens all the time even now. But yeah, like now it's at that age, like that Harlow's at now, kids are so mean. Like kids are so mean.
They
like,
just say it.
Yeah,
like,
they say
whatever
it. Whatever
comes to their head.
Yeah, it's not even like how it is. You can't even say they're saying it how it is because it's literally like they're just coming out with all sorts of things, horrible things. And I read some of the comments and I'm like, oh my god, that poor girl. Like, you know, it must be absolutely horrendous to hear. Like, and I know I got similar stuff as a kid, but like, I think once you're an adult and you're in your 20s, it's so easy to look at stuff and just be like, oh, whatever. Like, and they're clearly just jealous of that kind of lifestyle and things. And like, you know, but it would be, yeah, I think it would be really interesting because I think she's coped so well. And I cannot imagine, like, when I started doing like bigger meet and greets and stuff and meeting like hundreds of people in one go, I was around like 17 years old, like 16, 17, 18, that kind of age. Whereas she's been doing it since she was like 10.
Yeah, it's
like,
mental.
It's crazy. Like, and it's brilliant because I mean, you know, if you are that way inclined and you're happy to be online and that's all good and everything, then what a great way to set yourself up for a great future and things. And obviously she's done so much from that and she's a brilliant little jockey and everything as well. But like, yeah, it's just a lot of pressure, isn't it?
Yeah, it'd be very interesting.
It would be really interesting to have her on. Because yeah, I've never met Harlow in person. I don't think I did briefly actually at Horse of the Year show, but I don't think either of us really had a clue who. It was like Harlow's very first kind of like meet and greets, and we just didn't really know one another at all. So it's just kind of like, oh hey, like in passing, but we haven't had a proper like chat before. But I think she would be really interesting. Yeah.
No, there are really three amazing people.
And Megan is very self-explanatory. They're just really cool. They're both hilarious. Esme is so like, I always found when I first met Esme in person, because I think a lot of her early content was sort of whether or not she meant it to be or not, or whether it was just as she was like growing up as well, was more geared towards like younger kids, I think. Like, so I always thought of Esme as almost like this, I don't know, like a CBeebies presenter, like she was like, I don't know why, because obviously she's like my age, and I think she's a year younger or something. But yeah, meeting her in person, I just realised how like normal she is, and like how similar, like, you know, in the way she spoke and stuff. I was like, okay, no, this is fine. Like, I think, you know, she just spoke completely normal. I think she was so interesting, and obviously she's got her own podcast and so, and she's doing great with it as well. And then Meg is just like, she's brilliant to have on. She's just so chatty, so genuine. How you see Meg online is exactly
that's what everyone said to me.
She's exactly the same. She's so funny. She's just so out there as well. Like, she's similar to me in that there's no like nothing's off limits really with Meg. It's just, you know, she's brilliant though. She's lovely. So definitely recommend them.
No, amazing. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast and letting us go.
For Britain, so
no, you've really like opened up and shared. I know it's all things you've spoken out before, but to a different audience, I feel like it's going to be really, really interesting.
Hopefully everyone enjoys it. We'll see.
No, so thank you so much.
No worries.
Thank you guys. If you've watched this on YouTube, make sure you're subscribing and liking, leaving us comments. If you're over on Spotify, make sure you leave us a review, and I will see you next week. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me.